welcome to you all. My name is Vishal, and this is the beginning of our WhatsApp on our cohort for ISO 19650. We would be studying how 19650 makes sense for a production in a production cycle and helps you to comply with 99001 in a BIM world. We know the built environment is moving into the domain of being automated in terms of how it's going to be. Give me just a bit. Let me just do a sound check. Yeah, we are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and of course, we are on Zoom as well. You're more than welcome today. We're going to see today and these are bite-sized classes that we will be having 15 minutes a week. Being a working professional, we all can take that time out, and you are more than welcome to either join on LinkedIn live or on a Zoom session right after these messages. See you around. Welcome back. So we will be discussing about ISO 19650 and how it makes in an organization, especially in a built environment, in an organization, how they can leverage on 19650 by embedding 19650's processes into their BIM production cycles. This is for built environment organizations and architectural, civil contractors, you name it, whosoever is in the full cycle of the built environment, be it from the stage of when the client thinks of the project in his head to the stage wherein the architect builds the first mural and they gives a digital image or a digital information to the client about saying, sir, this is how your building will look like, or perhaps your infrastructure project will look like, to the level of when the building has done its life cycle of, let's say, 50, 60, 70 years, I don't know, and then getting demolished. Till then, BIM stays with it. And that is what we're going to study, how you can make sure that you are, as a BIM professional, or for that matter, a BIM faculty, if you may, would be able to, or a BIM manager, a budding BIM manager who wants to be a BIM manager, how you can implement all these in your process. My bad. This is session number 4. And very quickly, I will just run you through. This link is about our lesson plan. Today, we're going to see the cost of data. Now, and this is already available on our LinkedIn post from the post that you came over here. So this is our lesson plan. Our last session will be on 24th of April. And what we will be doing by that time is you would have built a case study for your management to convince them why they need BIM. That is number 1. Number 2, your strategy of your organization, which is usually in 9001, ISO 9001, which most of the organizations are these days, would be aligned with it. And you will be having a BIM execution plan done as well. So that's the idea. We will go through the whole session together, and that will be reading. And you're more than welcome to. Oh, my bad. And you're more than welcome to ask questions anytime if you like. If you're on Zoom, you can simply unmute yourself or type into the chat box. Maybe raise your hand, perhaps, and you can ask a question. So the context why we are doing this, why BIM came up into the being. Now, those of you who have joined us for the first time here, we have already done 3 sessions. And in these 3 sessions, we have talked about the history. We talked about how we, as a human being, started as cavemen, hutmans, and today we are living in swanky buildings, which are where we spend 75% of our life or a day, if you may, and why it needs to be safe, why it needs to be secure in terms of physical security, in terms of your well-being, why it needs to be that. We've already discussed all these things. You're more than welcome to go to our channel on YouTube and see those videos. 15 minutes, 15 minutes bites, so roughly 45 minutes overall. And if you do 2x, you have the time. We have only just built up on the concepts. So today we're going to talk about the context and the principles, the cost of bad data. So on the left hand side, you can see usually things when we talk about when they envisioned BIM, they said, oh, I will have data in my computer and I would be having a building in my hand, right? Unfortunately, that is how it does not happen. Now we started as the build environment started doing drawings from the engineering drawing boards when room full of drafters would sit in a room and they will draw the drawings by their hand and draft the drawing by their hand. And then came the computer era around about 1970s, 80s, wherein they started doing by CAD. Now CAD is not good enough because there are contractors, there are subcontractors, there are subcontractors, and there are architects, there are municipalities, there are authorities who needs to look at these drawings, approve the drawings, your design, being an architect or being a real estate development company. So authorities are involved. So this information has to be scattered and looked at. The same information of a building has to be looked at from many dimensions. And that's the reason it becomes very important that we have a very collaborative information. And that's where the BIM environment come into place. Everyone is just passing the ball. Okay, this information is, the fire contractor does not have an information. He wants time. He wants to buy time. Why? Because the fire pump plinth needs to be casted. Unfortunately, the fire pump has not been designed as of now. It has not been finalized how much GPM you need, how much power you need. Because of that, the impeller will be changed. The impeller will decide the casing of the pump, assuming it's a split case, and that will also decide the power of the motor, and by the power of the motor will also decide how big the casing would be. So how many things are interconnected with each other when it comes to a building. So that's the cost of the financial cost of poor data. Now, there is something called data and there is something called poor data. Now, if an information has been keyed in by a BIM process into one of the drawings or into one of the any of the models, and that information is not vetted, right? It's not substantiated, or it's not been looked at and it's not been approved. It costs a lot of rework. So you can see 52% has been a global rework caused by poor data and miscommunication. On the bottom right, you will see that I have mentioned the sources, and the last of the slides you will see where all we have got all these information from. These are all credible information sources written in Harvard style, referenced in Harvard style rather. So the hidden cost of another important problem is, and the basic problem, I've been on site, I've been an industry professional, I've been working in this industry for nearly 20 years. I can say it becomes a hell lot of task at times to search the correct information. Who's going to give you that information correctly? And that is where BIM comes in place, where you do something called CDE. And that CDE gives you single location of truth, single source of truth. What is on the CDE is the perfect information. Why? Because it has gone through the process of vetting, it has gone through the process of reviews, it has gone through the process of approval, and we have a digital record of it. And we will not be talking about tools and softwares, we will be talking about processes. Tools and software starts making sense once you know the software, once you know the process, right? Once you know how to, in your head, you know what is which way, if you want to drive a car, you know which way is where is the steering, what does the steering mean, what does the clutch means, what the brake does, what does the accelerator does, what does the gear does. You have those concepts in your head, and then you just have to make sure that you use those tools and use the processes, which is, in other words, the law of the land. You travel from point A to point B. That's the idea over here. So the other thing is 13% of the time is lost by people who are working on site because they are not able to find the single source of truth. You talk to the architect, the architect is, I'm not, I don't take it in other ways, but architects are more interested in the aesthetics of the building. They will say, okay, I want this color. Now, if it's a equipment which is statutory equipment, they might not have those colors in the first place. So, but again, who is approving it? Who is approving it? In the hotel industry, there are a lot of the GRMS panels which go onto your room. When you walk into any of the hotels, a hotel room, you will have those panels on your in your room, wherein you can press buttons, turn on, turn off lights, your HDMI and all. Those all needs to be those all needs to be vetted by somebody, right? And that is where the tools comes in place. You're not able to find where that information is. People are trying to playing beat around the bush because they are not finalized it yet. So that is where 13% of the time they lose. And then disconnect and data loss. So there's a lot of disconnect. On the site, you see something else. When you come to the when you come on see on the drawing, something else is happening. So 26% of the software solutions do not integrate to create a rigid information, and they're just creating a silos of information. That's it. It's not usable. And 30% of the data created during design and construction is lost at the project closeout. That's a very important phase. When the project closes out, I'm talking about greenfield projects only over here, because brownfield are different dimensions, but I'm talking about greenfield projects only. So in greenfield projects, you will lose 30% of the project of the data by the time you transition from building finish and the handover is happening to the client for the occupancy and all. So those are the numbers. These are very scary numbers, and that's where BIM, for that matter, and ISO 19650 kicks in. So overall, if you see what all phases are in, I'm not talking about all the phases over here. If you see the core principles and the overall, we were talking about the core principles that we need to keep in mind is of course the definition information requirements, the CDE, and the standardized processes. Now, why we need to standardize the process? Because across the organizations, 19650, when we talk about a 19650, you pick any project which is as defined by PMI is a unique endeavor, which has a definitive start and end date. You would be doing the same thing again and again, but the outcome might be different. So, but the processes more or less would be the same. So that's the reason standardization is very important. Why is that important? Because on projects, people come on contract basis. So the moment you onboard a person who talks the same lingo of the ISO 19650, it makes your life a lot of easy. It makes the project manager's life a lot easy just by talking the same language. How easy it becomes if I know one of the Southern India's language and you also know, and I can speak to you in that, and that turns out to be your mother tongue. It makes it easy for us to connect, right? And that comes for the technical world as well. Now, the first principle will be to start with end in the mind. Of course, you need to make sure that what is the end, which is the information that the client has asked, and that is where we talk about the 3 or 4 acronyms that we keep using time and again during the course of our interactions. One is organization information requirement, asset information requirements, project information requirements, and exchange information requirements. Why is that important? Because at the organization level, what all information is required? Okay, asset information, what all information needs to be passed on to the client, to the owner. Okay, the owner has asked that the outer wall needs to be fireproof by 3 hours. Just giving an example. Usually nobody will do that. They want it. So 3 hours. Where is that information captured? Would it be on the drawing? It would be in the information modeling. Now, the data, when I keep using the word data in our term, it would mean two things: visual data, and it would also mean the material data. It can be material of construction, thickness of the material, type of material that you have, and any other specification that is involved in it. And then you have the project information requirement as well, which talks about more or less what that project has asked for. Now, we need to be mindful that all these informations, especially your project information, starts to come from the bid stage, right? In the bid itself, you start making the building block of your PIR, right? Because the estimation team who is bidding for this project, they know what has been asked, and if you get this information from them, you just build upon them. You, of course, you revalidate and you build upon that. So I know I'm jumping around in many concepts, but can't help it. That is how the concept of our aligning ourselves to 19650 to 9001 comes in place, and that is what we want to do. So going very quickly, and of course the process approach: you plan, act, you plan, then you do, you check, which is in other words monitor if everything is fine, and then you act. So it's not that once you have planned and you have given your process or workflow to your subcon, your architect, your client information, your client representative, things will go smooth. No, 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 not going to happen. You need to make sure that you keep monitoring it. You have to take shortcuts some places. You have to do many things to speed up the process, but end goal should be the same. You need to have your asset information requirements fulfilled, given to the client, because that is what we need to give to the client, and of course the project information requirements as well. So the third principle is, of course, the common data environment. So the CDE is the center of the whole work that is happening. So, and it's you can call it a sophisticated database and a file server which holds all your information. When I talk about file server, it holds all the file drawings that you have checked in. Okay, it has all the information that you save in, and you retrieve that information as well. So that is where the CDE comes in place. So it's the place where you check in the information, you send it for approval, and that is where I'm talking about the check and review. So you do a work in progress, like you started doing a drawing today, or perhaps you created a schedule, and then you do a check and approve. The approve goes into shared. After the shared, it goes to authorize, and once the information, and it goes for building, and then it gets archived. And that is where, when you're this is only talking about a greenfield project, then it goes into archive for the facility management company, FM company, who's going to manage that facility. And what is overall going to be checked is your WIP, your shared, published, and your archive. And it is a tool again. For now, just understand it's a common USB drive wherein you keep in all your office keeps their data or keeps their drawings in one place. And we are not talking around drawings here, because we're talking about BIM, and we're talking about 3D information, and we're talking about many D's information. You can take 10D, 5D, 2D. We're talking all that information, and all that is secured in one place. So CDE is your single or one platform of single source of truth. So the last one, the principle that we're going to talk about, and is the level of information required. Please mind it, LODs are not being talked about anymore as for ISO 19650. They don't talk about, there is no mention of LODs in the ISO 19650. LOD is a concept which is being promoted by BIM Forum, and BIM Forum has come up with a document very recently, which they would be releasing very shortly to I mean, it's in review at this very moment, and they will define the LOD. But what it talks about, when you talk about the level of information, what is the geometry, what is the alphanumeric data, what is the documentation involved with it. Let's take an example. You have, let's say, the smallest unit of a building would be a brick, right? So you have to install, you have to take a brick which needs to be procured, and it needs to be brought into for your project. So what is the geometry of it, right? What is the alphanumeric, which is material of construction, right? The strength of it, right? Then the other documentation, um, civil will people will have more information on this, that they will need perhaps the strength of it, strength of it, any data sheet that is involved with it. Okay, it is it made of earth, or I mean soil, and is it made of the fly ash? So all those information goes is talking about level of information, right? And these are the information, and plus the visual information. When I talk about geometry, I mean to say more or less like um, the overall information in terms of these three terms. So the core the core of the strategic management, when we talk tenets of the strategic management is concerned, when we talk about integrating your ISO 19650 with 9001 to give you a quality output, is your assessment and needs, your collaborative production, right? That is where CDE and BIM kicks in, and then your security and quality. The key three takeaways for today's discussion is the cost. Yes, the cost is very real. 52% of the global rework. It's a too much of a high amount, and that goes into rework. And rework does not usually mean you're only installing more, or you're redoing perhaps a wall, or a cinder wall, or perhaps a gypsum wall, or perhaps reinstalling one of the equipments that are there. It means more than that. You have your manpower also. You have bench time for those people, the transportation time of the people that we have to bring them from the campsite to the project site. These all cost turns out to be 52%. It's very high, and we need to optimize that. The requirements first, of course, the organization information requirement, asset information requirement, and what does the employer ask for. All those information has to be found out. And the process over technology. So don't bother about the technology at this very moment, because these sessions will not be talking about X software works better than the Y software. Uh, we will not be talking about that. We will be talking about the processes, and we will be talking about the common data environment, which is where the workflow is. Do excuse me for the spellings on the workflow. And that's pretty much it for today. What are we going to do in the next session? In the next session, we will be looking at the ISO 19650 versus the traditional roles. We will be talking about shift in terminologies. Now, that is very important. What terminologies were being used before, which was in a CAD environment, perhaps, and what are we using now, and perhaps how the contracts will be written. We will be talking about all those things. And for today's discussion, these are the references that we picked up, and that's pretty much it for today. If you have any questions, you are more than welcome to unmute yourself on Zoom, or let me just have a look at the LinkedIn if we have any questions over there. Seems nothing, and we can always. So that's pretty much it for today. You have been a very awesome audience. You have been a very awesome audience. I do appreciate you joining in today, and we are learning bit by bit um, every week. 15 minutes is all that we need, and that's our lesson plan. And today's lesson plan is complete. With that, we come to the end of our session today. You have a very good weekend ahead, and take very good care of yourself. Bye-bye.